For centuries, human imagination has been haunted by an invisible nation sharing our world. We picture them lurking in deep forests or the pitch-black corners of lonely roads, possessing terrifying speed and physical strength that dwarfs our own. This universal dread leads to a specific assumption, that because these entities operate outside the laws of our visible reality, they must be eternal, godlike spirits, immune to the vulnerabilities of flesh and blood. Islamic theology offers a different perspective. Though they are created from fire and hold abilities that defy our understanding of physics, they are entirely mortal. They age, they fall victim to illness, and eventually their bodies feel them exactly like ours do. This means the paralyzing fear so many hold is misplaced. When we cower in the dark, we are projecting divine invincibility onto a fragile biological creation that is just as susceptible to death as we are. Understanding how they die requires looking at how they are built. The Qur'an identifies their biological origin as mirage, the flickering, smokeless tip at the very peak of a flame. This concentrated heat forms a refined and agile physical structure. They are not formless ghosts, they possess anatomy. Because they have a physical body, they undergo a natural life cycle, progressing from infancy through youth and into old age. The Prophet Muhammad settled the question of their mortality in a well-documented prayer. During his late-night supplications, he stated, "O Allah, you are the ever-living one who has no death, whereas the jinn and humans die." That statement places both species in the same biological category. People often point to Iblis, or Satan, who has survived since the beginning of humanity, and assume his entire species lives forever. However, Iblis is a specific exception. His long life is a temporary delay of execution granted by God, not a standard biological trait of the jinn. While an average jinn might outlive a human by centuries, a long timeline is not immortality. Every member of their species is ticking toward a guaranteed expiration date. When that expiration date arrives, their lives end through very logistical means. The most common is natural causes. Entire generations succumb to illness, accidents, or the frailties of old age, ending when the angel of death arrives to extract their souls. The second way they die is through violence. Because they harbor intense emotions and tribal allegiances, bloody conflicts break out in the unseen realm. They wage wars against each other using magical capabilities and weapons forged from fire. The third method is a targeted cosmic execution. This is reserved for devilish jinn who attempt to breach the borders of the heavens to eavesdrop on angels and steal divine decrees. When they try to cross that threshold, they are met with lethal force. What we see as a meteor shower is described in Islamic texts as a fiery projectile thrown by angels, instantly incinerating the eavesdropping jinn. Their supernatural speed allows them to reach the edge of the sky, yet that same hubris places them in the crosshairs of a catastrophic and violent end. Their physical limits are matched by strict limits on their knowledge. A famous account involving Prophet Solomon dismantled the myth that the jinn possess knowledge of the unseen. Solomon had been granted absolute dominion over them. Under his command, powerful jinn toiled at the bottom of the ocean and on monumental construction sites. They worked in constant terror, convinced that Solomon, who stood nearby leaning on his staff, was supervising their work. But Solomon had already passed away. He remained propped up in death for months, until a tiny termite ate through the wood of his staff. When the wood finally snapped and his body hit the ground, the jinn realized they had been toiling in fear of a corpse. They had no idea he was dead. This brings up a logical paradox regarding their final judgment. If a jinn is composed of fire, how can the fires of hell possibly cause them pain? Islamic scholars resolve this using a comparison of materials. Humans are made from clay, but if a hardened clay stone strikes a person, it causes injury. The shared origin doesn't stop the pain. Hellfire operates on the same logic. It is 70 times hotter. When dark fire meets a jinn's body, it inflicts destruction. Neither their physical origins nor their powers grant them immunity from divine laws. The physics of their bodies will ultimately be turned against them. This vulnerability culminates in the ultimate equalizer. At the blowing of the first trumpet signaling the end of times, a cosmic cataclysm will instantly extinguish every living creature across the earth and the heavens. This is the hard limit for Iblis. After millennia spent running from his inevitable end, Satan himself will be struck dead by the sound, leaving the entire universe in a state of absolute silence. Then comes the second blast of the trumpet. This triggers a simultaneous resurrection. Humans will rise from the dirt, while the jinn will stand up from wherever they perished, whether that was at the bottom of the oceans or suspended in the winds. On the day of judgment, the playing field is leveled. The jinn will be stripped of their ability to turn invisible or fly. In a state of terror, they will be forced to stand shoulder to shoulder with humans on the same harsh plane. In that gathering, no creature gets a pass. Regardless of how long they lived or what powers they wielded in the dark, every entity will answer for their actions. If an ancient race of supersonic beings made of smokeless fire is powerless against death, human arrogance has no foundation. Our focus shouldn't be on the things that go bump in the night, but on the Creator who holds the lifespan of every creature in his hands.